excused. Breslin.
Present.
Goodlow.
Present.
Burke excused. Clarkson.
Here.
Corcoran.
Here.
Dada. Feldman.
Here.
Freeman.
Here.
Hedrick.
Here.
Kern, Hughes, Patterson excused. 5. Reason.
Here.
Schmitz.
Here.
Swearell.
Here.
And Jones.
Here. All right, we have the agenda. Are there any additions or changes to the agenda? Okay, moving forward with that. Anybody move adoption of the agenda? It is so ordered. Okay, any public comments, Nadia? No? No public comments. Okay, we then go to the approval of the minutes of the commission meeting on February the 12th. You have those before you. Are there any additions, corrections? Anyone want to make a motion for acceptance of the minutes?
I'll make a motion to
Okay, so, okay, Patricia seconds. Any further discussion? If none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? I abstain, so it wasn't here. Although I did watch the meeting, by the way. If anybody ever misses me, watching the meeting that we've recorded is really kind of fascinating.
High definition, by the way.
Yes, and as I've told 2 or 3 of you who usually sit at that end of the table, your laptops and everything else are clearly visible to the public and everything that you have on it, so just be careful. So I was reading, I think it was Kevin's notes on his iPad as he was scrolling through email. Anyway, but just as a notice, it is, you want to be careful what you have up anyway. Okay, we go down to the chairman report. I wanted to thank Walt for chairing in my absence. I get a endoscopy every 6 months. And I have what they call Barrett syndrome. When we do this as a public service with the doctors and others, Gloria Greer, some of you may have known. Gloria was a close friend. She was the social editor of the Palm Springs Life until she died. But those of us who have just gastric reflux over time can cause throat cancer. And I was one step removed about 4 years ago, and there was a new procedure to burn the lining of your throat to get rid of the precancerous cells. It was very successful. But our advice, and Gloria actually, she canceling her appointment is what she did. She ended up dying of throat cancer. But she had written a good article in the Palm Springs Life, which has saved many, many lives, that those of you who have any gastric reflux that's significant, it's always good to get a endoscopy. And my particular gastroenterologist, as a result of that article that Gloria and I wrote, has saved many, many lives of people you just don't realize. So anyway, I opted to keep that appointment as opposed to coming to the airport commission meeting, even though I saw it was an exciting meeting.
We should say congratulations to the new dad, Guillermo. He is a new dad.
Oh, I'm still going through. Yes, Guillermo, congratulations.
Thank you.
Want to tell us everything? Very good, very good. That's excellent. Okay, moving forward. Let me go through here. Jan is not here, but we did receive notice that the Desert Hot Springs City Council has nominated Jan Pye to continue to represent Desert Hot Springs on the commission, the airport commission. Also, let me just go through some of these notes. The ethics training, I think all of you may have gotten the notice, we're required to complete a 2-hour session every 2 years. And it was scheduled for Thursday, April the 2nd, and has been now rescheduled to Wednesday, April 29th. From 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. So you might want to make note of that change.
Mr. Chairman, if they can't make that, there's an online option as well.
Right. Yeah, the online is I've done for years, and some of you have done that as well.
Now, you said it's every 2 years?
Every 2. You should have received a notice if you need to do it, I think.
I thought I did it last year.
Yeah, I did better.
You and I were.
Yeah, but that was, I called, and that was a different
Oh, that was a
training.
different
Yeah.
training.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. But you can do it online, and you can't go faster than 2 hours, just so that you know. So you can't speed through it. It's going to take you 2 hours regardless. Sorry, I don't know what's wrong with my voice, but it comes and goes. I think it's the allergies out here. It came to our attention that several boards and commissions on their website did not have the names of the commissioners listed. I'm pleased to announce that we have all of our commissioners now listed on the website. There were only 3 boards and commissions that had names out of all of the commissioners. So we were not alone. But now each of you appear on the public website as well, to bring you up to date on that. The other notice, and just to let you know, the city council did not approve the request to move the meeting to 8 o'clock. So as of July, we must begin meeting at 5:30 in the afternoon. So you need to mark your calendars. The question is if any commissioner thinks we should begin earlier than July, or do you need that 3-month time to continue to meet at 8 to make whatever adjustments or changes? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, let's wait till July, and we're over the month of April. That Wednesday night is a holiday, Jewish holiday, April 8th, first night of Passover.
That is, you need to take a look at that probably as well. Go take a look at that. We've done that adjustment before. All right, so I'm getting a consensus just by your body language that we'll begin it in July. Patricia?
A question on point, I think. When we look at holidays coming up, do we have the leeway to change them for those holidays? Is that something that could be directed to the city manager, or if that's an issue?
David? Yeah, no, we can change.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you.
Well, we've done it in the past.
Pardon me?
We have done it in the
Oh,
past.
no, we've done it in the past. No, we have done it in the past. We'll take a look at that. That's the April meeting. So we'll take a look at that.
So, taking a look at that, can we take a look at that right now, because someone needs to make plans, travel plans to do it online, so doing it like another couple of weeks,
Sure.
it's not really work out.
We can.
I just put French batteries in there.
I know, but.
So we're talking about April right now.
So maybe the camera is
So
out
do you
of
have
battery.
a,
I can leave it
we're scheduled for
on
April
long.
the 8th. How, what's the feeling of the commissioners? Do you want to move it?
Day before,
Pardon me?
day before.
Well, that's what I'm suggesting, day before.
Lisa, no,
The 7th?
Yeah, that's officially for people.
Pardon
The
me?
holiday actually starts in the evening. For my personal travel, it's better to do it the day before, but I just don't want to sort of set the stage that suits me personally.
No,
But
we
the official night, the official start of the
No.
holiday is the night of April 8th.
Right,
Well,
no,
we have
no.
it in the morning. Meeting in the morning.
Yeah, that's fine.
Do you want to keep it in the morning, or did you say you
I just
travel?
didn't want it to bias to my personal travel need,
Right.
that's all. You can do it with information the way it is, or however you see fit,
So we're leaving it for the 8th.
Leave it for the 8th,
in the morning.
in the morning. Oh, right, still in the morning. Okay, all right, so no change to the meeting. We will begin.
Just a pretty neat photo. I think, Bill, you'd appreciate this. Double contrails next to the moon coming in at work one day. And it's a nice little photo. Presidential visit, a lot of folks ask, well, what can we do? And there's 2 support aircraft, large ones, that bring in a lot of the support equipment that's essential to the escort from the airport to whatever destination the president is going and so forth. There's the aircraft again, a couple of shots. A nice field shot there, Mr. Chairman. Now, the coronavirus is a very serious issue. Them in the lobby, people coming off the aircraft, the first thing they see before they get to the terminal are hand sanitizers, and naturally, washing hands is paramount. But just let everyone know, the airport's fully functional, operational, it is safe and efficient, and there are people using the airport, Mr. Chairman. They really are. And now, there's no doubt that the corona will have an impact on the economy. The economy has an impact, and so does the airport. Right, Mr. Chairman?
But we're continuing to move forward with all projects.
Full steam ahead on the project.
Both being ahead on projects. Are there any questions? Yeah, Kevin?
Tom, have any of the airlines cut capacity?
They are, United has indicated 10% network-wide. My guess is there'll be some other airlines as well. With the change in the events you were saying, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
about the events and the tourism?
Several, yeah, as you know, Coachella has postponed, Stagecoach has pushed back, the Red Dress Red for this was another major event for the LGBT Community Center has now been postponed. The tennis tournament has been postponed,
Cancel.
or canceled actually, that one's been canceled, the other been postponed and being moved back into the year. So
Well, the tennis
Coachella,
tournament said they're looking at a different day.
pardon me?
They said they're looking at a different date. the
Which?
tennis tournament.
Oh, the tennis tournament, okay, very good. So, those are the cancellation changes. So,
Presentation.
right, we'll get down to your report. Okay, the next would be the city manager report. David?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple things to convey. On a couple of the positions we're recruiting for, as you know, are the top marketing candidate, top two, ultimately chose not to come to Palm Springs. So we do have a recruiter. That recruiter is continuing that search. We will keep you posted in the candidates interviewing as soon as we get other candidates viable to interview. The operations position, I guess, is starting April 6th.
To the assistant director.
And so that's good news. And the engineering, we still don't have a qualified candidate for the engineer's position. And that's certainly one we don't want to hire unless we're all convinced that it's the right person for the job. So those are the updates there. And I do want to thank Tom and his staff. They really went into action on the sanitizer, all the stuff with the virus that you can assign your sanitizer. So they really did a good job. And we're doing that all over all facilities, but the airport was particularly important, as you know. And the only final thing I would note, Mr. Chairman, is with regard to the parking contract. So the process is it's in a different on a different trajectory now. So we did the bid, just to refresh everyone's memory. We did the bid for the parking contract renewal. We had a low bidder. The committee made a recommendation. That would then go to council, and what is just as a matter of course, I would bring it here for your review, and if you want to make a recommendation. That being said, there was a protest by the other bidder, and so we tabled it at that point. So now the formal protest period requires us to address their concerns, which procurement did and staff did. Since then, the other vendor has actually filed a formal appeal. So now it's in a different process where there's a 10-day period that actually has to be determined actually by the city manager. So right now, the staff is putting together all that different kinds of arguments on both sides, and then it'll be reviewed again with the city attorney, and then the decision has to be made, I think, in about another 7 days or so. But the point is then it will then go to city council on April the 2nd before your next meeting. Now, the reason it's not coming back here formally is because what the city attorney has advised. Now, at this point, if it came back here, this would be another appeal forum, and it wouldn't be fair to all the vendors. So what I will do is it will be going to council on the 2nd, whichever ultimately the decision is. But then we will obviously, brief you and let you know exactly that portion of it at your next meeting. So anyway, that's just the process there.
Any questions?
My question is, since it's going to be heard on April 2nd, is it up to the commission if we choose to write a letter in support or not, towards?
The city attorney would advise not, because then it's a political issue. Because the board doesn't have the benefit of the information from all sides and all parties, so then it would be viewed as not necessarily neutral.
Thank you.
And the reason that we're in this very strict set of regulations now is to make sure this is a fair process for all the vendors.
Any other questions?
The marketing director position, candidates that declined, was it because of financial considerations or?
It's an interesting mix, because, you struggle with these things. But at this position, at this level, it was a combination of, one, you kind of got the sense that, well, they're almost, you got a better offer where you are. You almost feel like that was sort of the point. And the other one, again, the level of compensation ultimately then wasn't enough for that individual to move the family. So, this information is very clear up front, but it's part of the process as you go through. Now the other options are, so for example, there are lots of things you can do. If you wanted to do extra to get, a different level, there's different models where perhaps like the CDB could contribute X amount to the salary along with the airport, et cetera. So there's different models that we were considering and looking at, and so those are all possibilities. But right now, we think the salary is pretty competitive.
Right. It is. Any other questions for Dr. Reddy? If none, thank you. We'll move on now to the budget and finance report. Before I turn to Tom, I was going to give a brief update in terms of the Budget and Finance Committee, and that committee met on March the 4th. I chaired it in the absence of the chair. And we had great attendance. Only 3 members of that committee could not attend. We had a great presentation by Recondo and Associates to understand how Recondo arrived at the figures they've done. As you recall, this has to do completely with the airline use and lease agreement that continues to be negotiated as we move forward. There were great comments from everybody there. It was very thorough. And the vote and the action of the Budget and Finance to the Commission, of course, was to continue the negotiations, and that when they reach a satisfactory agreement between the airport and the airlines, it will come back to the Commission for action. And that's pretty much what was been most of our activity on that. We talked about the new car rental facility planning as well. Talked about the dynamics. Again, we had excellent input from the city manager, of course, as well as our bond expert, Ken, talking about that. And yes, Dan, I'm not saying Dan, David.
So, on Recondo, you said there will be a further work done, then it will come back to.
Right.
Can we get a timeline on that into the record, so you know when that will be? Is it a month, 6 months, 2 weeks?
The agreement terminates at the end of this year, so there's still about 9 months left. So whenever that portion of the negotiations arrives, if something that's agreeable, then that will come back to the commission.
Are we taking, on the budget committee, you took a motion that was passed unanimously. So I take it this will come up to the commission for us to decide on it. Is
Yes.
that correct?
Absolutely.
This will come up.
Oh, yeah.
No.
Yes, indeed.
Okay.
This is a recommendation by the Commission.
I would like to say I was an observer during your session, and I do have some comments. I don't agree with the conclusion that you arrived at. My feeling is we passed a budget for fiscal year 2020 to 2021. And I think in line with that budget that was approved by the commission, and we should stick to that. My opinion is that we should extend the existing residual hour agreement until June 30 next year, coincide with the budget that we passed. And also keeping in mind that in the July commission meeting, the executive director told us CPEs would not rise about 8.24 by year 2024. Yet we are going into the $8 immediately. So I would like to see us stay with what we have approved, the budget for fiscal 2020-21, and extend the existing agreement until June 30 of next year. That is my recommendation. And especially considering the uncertainty with the coronavirus, we don't know what will happen with traffic. There's a very good chance traffic may decline. In your meeting, it was discussed that these numbers were predicated on a 2% increase. Some commission members were confident that maybe traffic would grow by more, maybe 4%, and at that stage the cost would come down, and that is correct. But on the flip side, if the traffic goes down, the cost will go up even further. So I think extending the existing agreement until June 30th next year, it's a slight delay, it's a 6-month delay, and we will have the benefit to see how this whole situation shakes out, and we're in a better position to make a smarter decision. That's just my opinion.
Well, we have a unanimous recommendation from the Budget and Finance Committee just to continue and let them continue with the negotiations. The outcome could be, as you suggest, Peter, I don't know. I have no idea where that would go. I guess we did not have this on the agenda really to endorse it. So, Mark, did you want to speak to that?
Just real briefly, it's been suggested that we have a follow-up meeting with the information that Recondo presented. So we contacted Recondo and they're available March 23rd or March 24th. So if this body would like to hear their presentation in more detail, either of those dates could be available.
Okay, March 23rd, and what was it?
It's Monday, March 23rd, they're available all day, or Tuesday the 24th, they're available after 9 a.m.
But could that meeting be for the entire commission, or is it just the budget committee?
But it have to be at this point, the Budget and Finance Committee, I mean, they came forward with the recommendation. I would think this would be the Budget and Finance Committee would have to review that. It would be open to any commission, any of our committee meetings are open to every
Yeah,
commission.
but, we're still sitting there and observing,
Right,
and
that's
so,
true.
like,
But when it
I would have told you, well, maybe not exactly the same thing, because I didn't know about what was developing under
Well,
Corona.
nobody knew what was developing at
But
that point.
I've always felt that, we were raising our CPs too fast, too quickly, and too high. So if I could have spoken,
Yeah.
I would have weighed in at the meeting, but of course I could not. So
No.
this is my only,
That's right, you
my
could
only
not.
opportunity to do it today.
Well, it was vetted pretty thoroughly. I mean, the Recondo did a very good job of describing exactly what they would do in the new approach. I will admit, Peter, that the new variable is the coronavirus and the potential effect and impact there. I think what would make the most sense, unless the commission wants to come up with a different alternative, is to reconvene the Budget Finance Committee on either the 23rd or the 24th, invite any commissioner who wants to attend to hear the conversation, and we can revisit that given the new environment.
Well, much was discussed during the meeting that it shouldn't have a big impact on airlines cutting service. And that may be true, may not be true, with the coronavirus, now we don't know why they're cutting. But the one thing that wasn't discussed was new service, where airlines, for the sake of transparency, we should say there was an airline that had plans to start new service to Palm Springs. And when they heard about these increases, throw everything in the book.
I'm not even aware of that.
Well, that's my point.
Yeah, but Mr. Eddie,
So I think we're getting,
yeah, far.
yeah, well,
Yeah,
I suggest just in the recommendation.
yes.
So, this was back when trying to think. I requested this meeting for condo, because I have stakeholders, obviously this is a large decision. We have 9 months to make the process, we have plenty of time. There are some stakeholders who had some concern about, sorry, this is what I suggested. I'm gonna ask for condo to come in, because the process we're in is probably a good process. I want for condo to come in and explain again specifically what we're doing with a group of stakeholders who has concern. It will be with the budget committee. The outside stakeholders would not recommend that the other members attend, only because the city attorney gets very nervous, and again, you can't participate anyway.
Right.
You could listen, okay. What I recommend then is that we could agendize this for our next meeting.
Yes.
And then subsequent to that additional meeting we have, then we can have a full discussion with the board. So if you want to extend it, change it, all those things would be right to discuss then when it's actually agendized.
Yes.
Yeah,
That's good.
but David, in all fairness, this commission approved the budget for 2020 to 2021. What has become so urgent that we now need to change it? I mean, why can't we go through that budget that we have approved and then, so extend the current agreement to coincide with that budget? It would be better anyway, because then it would be really within our fiscal year.
I'm all for extending contracts and having more time, that's a great thing, but I would just note that it really has little to do with the budget cycle, because this is a 10-year contract.
Right, exactly.
So, and you've got 9 months, we're in a good time frame to get this done by the time it expires. But if the board wants to extend it, there's nothing wrong with that. But I think we need to agendize
Right,
it.
we have to agendize, because it was not on the agenda for today. So we will agendize that. We'll ask the Budget and Finance Committee then to reconvene on the 23rd or the 24th. To hear, I think David made a good recommendation. I mean, you can attend, but you're not allowed to ask questions or enter into the discussion. City attorney has made that very, very clear. You can attend if you want to hear the discussion, but we can bring that discussion, the results of that discussion back to the commission, and we'll have it on the agenda for the subsequent meeting.
And so when is that meeting now?
The 23rd, the 24th, we'll have to,
Oh, we don't have that set.
no, we don't have it set.
We're
They're
trying, those are tentative dates, we're trying to get everyone's
Right,
schedule.
yeah. And then we'll put the meeting around it. So,
And who we invited is the CBB, the local stakeholders of CBB, they had some concerns, and so that thought it'd be good, instructive to have some discussion with Recondo, so they understand the process better, and of course with the budget.
right. Okay, then we're going to move forward. Tom, we'll continue with the Budget and Finance Report. I'll turn to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First item, Mr. Chairman, is the Customs Border and Protection analysis. And I would probably defer that to you to ask.
Yes, Jan, would you like to report, because that's come before your committee?
Yes, to summarize, we've talked about some of these things at the full commission before. But the Operations Committee met on the 7th of January, and we reviewed Customs and Border Protection facilities and possibilities at PSP. Just to remind ourselves, we were an international airport, but that's only because we're receiving pre-cleared Canadian traffic. So CBP does inspections at those approved airports in Canada that serve PSP. And so they don't have to go through Customs and Border Protection inspection once they arrive here. The airport does have a facility for CBP, and there's one CBP agent, but it's dedicated to GA traffic. So at this point, we can't accommodate commercial international traffic into the airport. And there's been discussion of members of the commission, and certainly in the community at large, about the potential for international this case Gensler, be approached to come back with a proposal to take a look at the conceptual possibility of using the regional concourse for that purpose. Also understanding, which we, as the commission really don't, the onerous requirements of the CBP specifications. And so that's where we left it. We have it now as an agenda item today. And that's where we are. My understanding is we've not yet approached Gensler or asked them for a proposal. It's good that we talked about the budget because I believe there's currently no budget for such an undertaking. Not that we perhaps couldn't create one, but it doesn't exist today. And one just personal view at this point, we're talking about airline use and lease agreements. The airlines, once we get serious about this, obviously would have to be approached because it would have to be incorporated in the airline use and lease agreement. So that's my summary.
Excuse me, any questions for Jan on this?
Yeah, and
This is not an action. Yes?
Well, there is an action.
Oh, for the,
Yes.
okay, this didn't, because I missed the
The
last meeting.
recommendation from the committee is to proceed with that.
Yeah, the recommendation from the committee was to proceed to request the airport consultant, in this case Gensler, to look at the conceptual possibility of using the regional concourse.
So that's the motion that you're making on behalf of the committee. And is there a second? Then we'll come to discussion. Is there a second to
I
that?
don't need a second if the subcommittee already.
No, you do need a second if it's a
No,
motion.
it's an action item for the.
It's an action item for the full commission.
I'll second.
Thank you. All right, now it's open for discussion.
I have a couple of questions. In terms of budget money, as I recall, from the subcommittee meeting, it was suggested that Gensler will do that without raising the fees that we've already agreed to. Is that correct or is that not correct? Do you?
Tom?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Tom's suggesting that they would do it at no additional cost, their review, but that wasn't my
I
understanding.
don't remember that,
That was not-
the meeting. Well, that was my misunderstanding.
Yeah.
So it would help if we would have an idea what we're talking about.
The only way we can formulate that, Mr. Chairman, is to sit down and define a full scope,
Right.
and they apply hourly rates that are in the base contract. And I spoke to him yesterday. He remembers our conversation. They are interested, but until he could not give an estimate until we lay out the full scope and the level of effort for that.
And the other question is, would this be limited to the regional concourse that's reviewed?
No,
Or the entire
I
airport?
think the chairman might have misspoke there, is that we will look at every
Right.
facility possible, baggage claim, Bono concourse, everything, including.
Yeah.
But we're talking about the regional, so I mean, is probably the
Well, the
easiest.
regional concourse probably would not work, I mean, unless you have a new baggage claim area and the regional.
Let's not conjecture, we gotta see what can work and not throw anything out before it's.
Okay, no, but then we
Right.
I just want to be sure that it wasn't limited to the regional.
Not at all,
No, no, no.
anything at all.
And I should have expanded on that. It is long-term, and on the basis that it is long-term, yes, obviously, we have to take a look at the potential of other areas of the airport.
Now, the good news is that, the documentation for the G8 customs facility is 500 pages. I suspect that the commercial aspect is longer. It very well may be not necessarily long-term. The consultant could come back and say, we reviewed it. You can do this, A, B, and C, and if it's utilizing existing field facilities with minimal investment, then let's keep optimistic. But it does have the potential to go long-term, it could be, so let's let that process play out. Let's stay optimistic.
And I would like to throw in, because it's new information that I've gained, when we talked about it, we were mostly talking about international in terms of like Europe or Asia. But I had a discussion with the consultant actually after the last meeting when he presented Oliver Lamb. And one thing that I found interesting, he commented on is that he actually had sort of preliminary discussion where there were carriers in Canada that were looking at services from Victoria, BC, Abbotsford, BC, and Hamilton, Ontario. None of these airports have any U.S. clearance, so we could not accommodate these flights right now because there is no clearance. But yet there is a possible demand for our destination. So I just want to throw that in because when we were talking about it, we were talking about an international meeting in Europe, and we all agreed that it wouldn't be happening, you know, within the next couple of years or so. So, but this might change that equation.
Well, that's a good point. Another point, Mr. Chairman, is that hopefully the federal government will pre-clear more.
Right.
Because right now, we can't accept flights from Dublin
Right.
technically, and we have a concourse that can handle that. So hopefully in this process, Washington has the wisdom to say, let's open up the gates and allow more commerce and tourism to come in with pre-clearance.
Right.
So that's also a great opportunity.
Any other questions, comments, discussion? Okay.
So we'll just be clear what the request is, so we know what's coming to the agenda.
Okay, yes. Jan, you want to repeat that?
Yeah, let me revise it slightly here. That the airport consultant, in this case, Gensler, we requested to review the possibility of CBP facilities at PSP.
Very good.
Mixed use.
But just to clarify that, asking them to do it, I want to just make sure, we want a proposal, because this will be upwards over $100,000 just for the study.
Right.
So once we get that proposal, then we will bring that
Right.
back.
Yes.
Right.
Okay.
Precisely.
Exactly. All right, all those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Great, thank you, John. We move on to the Lamar Airport Advertising Concession Agreement Extension. That was in your packet. The recommendation is to recommend that the City Council approve the contract services agreement extension for a term of 2 years. It's a pretty straightforward analysis. I don't know if anyone has any questions or anyone wants to make yet the motion.
I make the motion.
Thank you, Peter. Is there a second to that? Kevin makes the second to that. Is there any discussion on this? This one is, as I say, pretty straightforward. All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Great. Now we turn to Tom for the project updates. You may recall I asked Tom starting in January at every meeting from here on out to give us an update on the capital projects and other projects on our agenda. So,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Despite all the industry changes, viruses, we are forging ahead with very vital projects that will improve the viability of this airport. First and foremost is the ticketing project. And, well, wait a minute, let me back this up a little bit. Let's talk about the car rental project. That's the order we're presenting today. As you know, the Finance Committee was involved in the car rental project. Mr. Chairman, you mentioned we had a very informative discussion. Just to refresh your memory, the consultant took 365 days worth of data, compiled it from all of the existing car rentals. Once that was compiled, looking at the north site, it equated to about 1.3 to 1.4 million square feet of space that was necessary to be able to encompass all of the necessary operations of the car rentals. When they modeled that site, you had this sizable, gargantuan facility next to the terminal, and the immediate reaction was that it appeared that the terminal was attached to a parking facility. So by input of the staff and the city management and the airport commission was to have the consultant go utilize other opportunities, meaning sites. More specifically, off of Kirk Douglas Way, we have a very sizable piece of property that is really underutilized So the takeaway was, as explained at the committee level, is there are now 3 options being analyzed. The north end, 100%, south end, 100%, then a hybrid between the two. Something done on the north end, something done on the south end. So that has been conceptually laid out, but the big decision-making aspect, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission, is what's the feasibility, what's the affordability. So what is concurrently happening is Recondo Associates is looking at the state statute on daily fee collection, coupled with our balance of $22 million in CFC revenue, and looking at different scenarios of bonding. Remember, we discussed this, Ken's an expert at bonding, are we looking at a 20, 25, or 30-year bond? Couple that with the limitations on the daily collection and our forecast transactions, that will essentially dictate what we can afford. That's very essential because we want to build to a budget rather than try to build something we can't afford. Secondly, Gensler is very good at what they do, but they hire a sub-consultant to do the estimating of the basis of design. And as we found out with our ticketing project, Mr. Chairman, what we estimated wasn't reality. And that's true on this the small remodel in the terminal. The estimates are based on reality, and that's happening all over the country. So what we need to do is, that consultant probably by about the 25th of this month had indicated yesterday that they could get those results, and then we will merge the two and reconvene the operations committee and the finance probably at the same time to say, here's what we can afford, here's what needs to be built. In the meantime, we continue to meet with the car rentals to get a barometer of what their temperature is, or a thermometer with the temperature of what they feel they are akin to, or from a collaborative standpoint. Just like we're doing with the airlines, we're going to arrive at an agreement that both parties agree on. So that's in the mates, and when that information, that critical information comes, we will reconvene. I expressly told Gensler, take the time you need. We need these figures to be accurate. Now, I did contact Fresno, and our friend there are in the process of doing a design build, and ironically it's in about an 800 space structure, and I got all the information from them and sent them to Gensler and sent them to the estimator who's on the other side of the United States. So we want the best estimate we can, Mr. Chairman. So that is that project. Now, given the fact that in the basis of design was predicated on one concept, the fact that we have 2 now is going to set the timetable back a couple of months. And this is a very important step. And this is one of those steps that is worth waiting for because that is a decision. This will be the most significant capital improvement project in the history of the airport, and from a financial perspective, it warrants that analysis. Any comments or questions, and please?
Any comments?
Questions on that?
Oh, to that. Okay.
So the ticketing project is full steam ahead, and a lot of little pieces coming together on a daily basis. You can see on the south end of the building, we have some alternative space in addition to what we're building out in the terminal to make sure that our airline partners are accommodated appropriately, and that is worked out. We've got air cargo screening equipment and a series of buildings there as well. I had another photo. If you notice coming in to the right, you saw the old gift shop to the right of the checkpoint. That is going to be the home of Alaska Airlines. They will have their ticket counters there because that entire section will be closed off in different phases. So that's coming along. What is really a lot happening behind the scenes with regards to the detailed baggage handling system, that's about 70% being completed from an approval standpoint. Manufacturing should start very soon. That's being done in Louisville, Kentucky, a key function or a key element. We are also building right now behind the scenes what we call the IDF, which is the heart of the technology aspect, the connectivity that the airlines need in the interim and in the permanent. Once that IDF is constructed and everything wired up, it's like it's interesting. It's like a heart with all the vessels going out to all parts of the building. Once that is done, come May 1st, full-bloated construction. Full-bloated construction. You will see some apron work on the south end. There's a small segment of the apron. If you could envision the back apron in this project, if you recall, for the airline's efficiency. And we talk about airline relationships and efficiency. We are making this airport extremely more efficient from the standpoint, the airlines appreciate that, and there's a cost associated with doing that. But on the back of the apron, we're gonna have 3 oval carousels. Now, for those of you that have been out and back and seen how the airlines currently retrieve luggage, not something we,
It's not.
it's not pretty, that's a good way to put it. So, that's exciting, but the back of the house is, that all has to occur at the same time, and there's gonna be a lot of phasing with that. So, that's very exciting. Schedule is on, we are on schedule, give or take a day here or there. Sometimes you gain a day, sometimes you lose depending on supply chain and so forth. So we're very pleased with that. There you go. Terminal modification, Ulysses is involved in the project right now, but if you look in the terminal, we have our beautiful checkpoint, expanded checkpoint is doing its work. Yeah, and we'd like to see more crowds.
I would say I go through that checkpoint on average 2-3 times a month, and it's incredible.
It is
It really is incredible. We don't have the lines extending out, going down towards the car rental agency. I mean, it's just, I don't know how many of the rest of you fly in and out, but I do fairly regularly. It is a breeze. I'm a TSA pre-check, but local entry, but still, it's so efficient and use it as
And we're not done yet, the TSA
Right.
has done it as well. The police office is done and they are moved in. I remember, hopefully you recall me explaining that without getting too detailed from a security point perspective, the police now is much more advantageous to a real incident at the airport, without getting into detail. They are much better positioned to be able to handle any litany of situations here, as opposed to where they were before. So strategically, it's done, they're in place. You'll see the front door being unveiled, there's a new, relocated down near the car rentals, another automatic door, we move that over as we prepare to extend the ticket counters. As we work on the car rental project, we still have the growth, despite the current situation worldwide. This airport will continue to grow, and we're preparing for that with adding some spaces there as well. And then that hallway going down to the left is going to start demolition, if not already, to remove that wall and bring that beautiful sunlight into the original Wexler design of the building. Just the removal of the wall is going to be magnificent. It's going to be wonderful, Mr. Chairman. Are there any questions at this point? No?
Any questions, Tom, and so forth?
I conclude my reports.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Yes, I was going to do that under my reports.
Okay.
Yeah, we are. So,
Any questions yet? We move on to the executive director and staff reports. It is exciting to see what's going on, what this commission has done in improving the projects moving forward, and to actually start to see it come to light is really gratifying. So, thank you, Tom, for that. Then we'll move on to the executive director and staff reports.
now I can speak. Thank you.
Yes.
Mark, why don't you give an update on the RFP for the concession?
So we worked through all the details, and it's expected the RFP for concessions will be available tomorrow to be advertised and be out on the street officially. So that's where we're at.
Perfect. Short and sweet, that was good.
Well, no,
No, I know, you do. I'm turning back to you to continue
Well,
your,
that's
I can see your list.
choice.
I can see your list.
Passenger boarding bridge, another project we have going, that is actually, that prepared by the consultant and reviewed by staff, is going down to the procurement department by their deadline of Friday, so that it can get out in the street and bid in time for us to get a federal grant. Aircraft rescue and firefighting trucks, another grant project, is already at and being advertised for new trucks, concessions. We've done that. Sustainability, some great news. Patrick Telemarico with the city sustainability department has been working. This is his initiative, not ours, with the department, the DWA Water, and they are providing a grant to the city of Palm Springs to do 2 things. Number one, to develop a demonstration garden, a demonstration garden, specifically a garden for demonstrating plants that are sustainable in water consumption. And the idea is that, obviously the council hasn't vetted this, it has to churn through it, but he was successful in getting the DWA funding for that. The Sustainability Department is also spending about $30,000, and they've hired already, through City Council approval, a consultant to do the landscaping for that. It will come to this commission likely first and involve the whole concept. And I met with them, their team, for the first time yesterday amongst all the other projects, and that's very exciting moving forward. By the end of the two things are going to occur with this project. Number one, some level, hopefully, of a demonstration garden, so people waiting for aircraft, people, meeters and greeters, can go out and say, okay, well, if I build a home in the desert, what kind of plants, this is great. Right now, you can see out front, so that'll be number one. Secondly, if you recall, we went out to bid a couple of years ago, and we had it scared the airlines. It scared the airlines. The airlines were very opposed to that because of the expense and CPE and everything else, we agreed. But what we're going to do then is take that through this new consultant being managed by the Sustainability Department to relook at that program and right-size it financially to be able to convert the turf maybe with less aggressive or less expensive trees and plantings and so forth, and come up with a program where systematically over the years, the airport, over a period of years, can actually become more sustainable. Now, the airlines don't really care. Well, they care, but they don't want to have to support that. And that's one thing we're working out in the agreement, is how can we use some discretionary funding to do initiatives like that that are important to the valley. So, more to come on that. Website, do we have the website? Yeah. If you recall from the marketing committee, there is a website. It has video. That's impressive. So, what are we looking at, Nadia? This is
the main page.
so this is the main page with the different videos showing CVP. I think it was instrumental, Bob, right? This is the video you did? Absolutely wonderful job. So that also links back to the main city website itself. So that's been up and running for about a month now. There are some little nuances, and Nadia takes the lead on that, but amongst everything else we're doing, it's going to take some nuances to be able to, we have to retrain, don't we, Nadia? It's quite a bit of effort on how we can manage that. It's not something you just do overnight. It's going to take some refinement, but it's up and running.
Ask a question, is there the noise information on here somewhere?
It should be embedded in there. That should have transferred over, and we'll discuss it in the noise committee meeting following this meeting as well.
Oh, good.
And we continue to make improvements to that. So, Mr. Chairman.
That's great.
It's
It's exciting. I might add to, I hope you saw, I complimented, I wrote a letter to the editor. Some of you may or may not have seen that. I think I may have sent it out.
Yeah,
I thank, for Stan Craig for his leadership as well as the city council. But to remind everybody about the engagement of the commission and all of your work in helping to make all of these capital improvements and projects and an exciting airport moving forward. And it's nice to see that the website's going to be exciting as well and interactive. So, Jeff?
Just going back to the landscape issue, we had a landscape committee, but it sounds like maybe we'll just consider those issues as a whole now.
No, I don't go through the landscape.
Yeah, we'll go through the landscape.
So we still officially
Where
have
we
a
left off
landscape.
on that last year was that the city was hiring somebody on sustainability, and the recommendation is we work with that individual and they got on board, and that's really where we are moving forward with that. But no, we come back to.
You know, Michael isn't on the commission anymore, he was the chairman of it.
Then we'll find him.
Sure will.
I have a question on the RFP for the passenger boarding bridges. Is that going to be for refurbishment and or new ones?
Precisely. Yes. It gives the option of the bidder to bid on the rehab or the new, or they can bid on newer rehab, so we can determine financially what is going to be done.
Are there any other questions for the executive director? No? All right. We move now to commissioner requests and reports. Are there any, Jeff?
I just want to say, if anybody hasn't volunteered with the navigators downstairs, I did a 4-hour session last week, and it was really good. I learned a whole bunch. I would recommend that any of you, if you have the time, to spend 4 hours in a shift down there. The people that work down there are so nice. They were the nicest people. They really do represent Palm Springs well. And I learned a lot of things. I learned how woefully inadequate that bathroom is down there for women and the line that forms. And those navigators spend quite a bit of their time retrieving the carts from the parking lot, like a large part of the time. That's what I get about for 2 hours, is going out there pushing carts back in. And it just seems like there should be a better system for all of that. I can't imagine, some of those people are not that young, and I can't imagine this summer them going out there and retrieving all these carts from these parking lots out there. That just did not seem to be an ideal situation. It seems like you could hire somebody fairly cheaply to do that. I don't know, some kid in school, I don't know. But those were two of the takeaways that I had from spending 4 hours down there, but I would definitely recommend it. It was very enlightening.
You think it would help if you would have some areas where people declined, put it in one area, so it'd be easier?
Yeah, that I think would be one, because they're everywhere.
I mean, like shopping
Right
carts.
now, with
Yeah.
the construction, the way it is, that has had to shift back and forth, and as soon as we get that wall, we'll be able to tuck it in.
Now, there's a whole thing about that, being refundable, I guess it's an issue.
Credit card.
It would attract homeless people out in the parking lot, trying to bring back carts, and, bothering people going to their cars or whatever. So that was an issue with having it refundable, so, I don't know.
Thank you, Jeff.
Those people, I mean, they get paid nothing, and one woman had been working there 14 years, and she shows up every week, spends 4 hours. I know we all contribute, quite a bit of time to this, but they really, it's very impressive.
So it was very interesting to see the function of the airport and the passenger
And
movement.
the questions that passengers ask, things that, really, great.
Maybe we can make that appropriate on the commission.
No, I don't think that's the direction I'm going to go necessarily. But that's good. Thank you, Jeff, for sharing that. Any other commissioner reports? Yes.
Question for Dr. Gray, would please the attorney object if we call a special meeting of the commission for the 23rd and 24th with Recondo and agendized improperly and noticed improperly? Because we have plenty of time.
The commission can call a special meeting whenever you care to do so.
Because it strikes me as somewhat inequitable to have, on such an important issue, to have a certain number of people be able to speak and a certain number of people sitting on the side of the room. If it's that important that we're bringing them back in, so I would make that motion. And we hold a special meeting at the
Yeah,
date.
you're making a motion to have a special meeting of the commission on the 23rd and the 24th,
When Recondo's here.
as opposed to just the.
Well, they will be here. This is going to telecom.
Okay.
I would second that.
Any discussion? Ready for the vote?
I would just note that the purpose of this meeting
Yeah.
is for the stakeholders for one. Now, in a public meeting, and again, I don't know if that will chill any candid conversation they have, but
It might be best to do.
Well, I don't
Again, it's
expect the
totally-
entire commission to show up, but I think what David is saying, it would, those that are interested in the commission, would give them a venue where they can weigh in rather than just listen.
Or I have an alternative, because I don't want to chill that discussion. So let me throw something else out. Have we agendized this for the 8th of,
yes, it's already planned to do that.
Yeah.
That's the intent.
well, I heard we were talking about agendizing it. I didn't hear that it was.
Oh, right, no, it's, it will be on the agenda.
Because then that would be the forum where you would have, the whole commission would have.
Okay, I didn't know.
So we have
specific
to
date.
weigh in on it.
Oh, yeah, that
And it's
was,
in close proximity time-wise.
Yeah.
to
I'm
that
sorry we
meeting.
didn't make
I'm
that
fine with
clear.
that.
yeah,
And actually, at that meeting, I would invite, I would certainly want to make sure that CEB is here, Mr. White, and the other stakeholders, so I think they could help debrief on it.
Okay, with the clarification that we're specifically agendizing it for April 8th.
yes,
With Recondo present.
yes,
However, define present.
but it's still for a budget and finance committee on the 23rd of the.
I understand.
Right, yeah, I'm sorry if I didn't make that clear, it's definitely going to be agendized for the April meeting. Do you want to withdraw your motion?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Any other commissioner reports or questions?
Just one. I was reappointed
Don't know that there are any questions for that. Any correspondence? No correspondence. The activity report, I know, it will be coming as normal. And I think we have completed the agenda. The noise committee is going to meet immediately after adjournment. And Jeff, you're going to be chairing that.
Right.
So that will occur. Those members, of course, will be there. The rest of you can listen to talk or ask questions. We're being very precise in compliance. So,
Well, I guess they could fill out a public card and talk to anybody else.
well, that's I guess they could. There you go. All right, then we will adjourn. Motion for adjournment to our April 8th meeting. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Abstentions?